Hello and welcome to the Decking Awesome podcast. My name is Kira and I'm joined by the awesome Brian and Owen.
Hi.
Today we are talking about the Dungeons & Dragons campaign Curse of Strahd and why it's awesome. We are going to discuss what makes it different from other D&D campaigns, what we did to make it our own, and some fun times we had while playing it. A quick note that there will be spoilers ahead, so watch out. It's an awesome campaign and we wouldn't want to ruin your experience. So what is Curse of Strahd? It's one of the most popular D&D campaigns around. It's pretty much a Dracula-esque style story where Strahd is Dracula and you're in a spooky land that is filled with werewolves and ghosts and everything that you'd expect in a Dracula-style story. It's a long enough campaign in a spooky world called Barovia. It's been around a really long time, so it's pretty well refined. And there's a lot of world to explore, there's a lot of plot to explore, and it's open for any style of play.
I like that you say it's a nice long campaign where we settled into it thinking it was going to take us 3 months, and what were we, a year and a half playing it? Yeah. Amazing though.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful stuff. There's so many cool, memorable experiences in Curse of Strahd. There's like loads of different D&D campaigns out there, but Curse of Strahd is a classic. It's been around since the very start of D&D, and they keep updating it. And I would consider it the most compelling campaign currently out there for D&D.
Yeah, it's great as well that I think if you're looking for a campaign that you can just focus on completing it and playing through, it's got a good long story to it. But if you're like us and you have to explore every little side quest and nook and cranny in the whole place, there's loads there in the map for you to explore, to routes to go down, people to meet that you didn't even know were going to be there. It's great for all levels and all types of players.
Yeah, I think it's very unique in the fact that, you know, you have the campaign's called Curse of Strahd, and Strahd throughout the entire campaign is sitting in his castle and you can see him and he's just watching over you guys throughout the entire time in Barovia. It's not many campaigns do that, where they just have the supervillain just sitting there looking at you throughout the entire thing, kind of screwing around with your plans.
Yeah.
That's super rare. Usually there's an overarching plot where you visit lots of different locations. That's kind of still here in Barovia, but you know you're kind of stuck. You can't go visit the big Waterdeep to get like loads of different reinforcements and come attack them. No, you just got to deal with what you have inside Barovia. Very cool.
Yeah, I like it. Like, there's Strahd over there. He's the guy you're trying to stop. Good luck. Figure it out.
So Strahd is one of the key elements that makes Curse of Strahd pretty awesome. What are the other reasons that Curse of Strahd is so awesome?
I love the idea of a brooding vampire. You know, like the Strahd himself is such a cool character. The whole reason that Curse of Strahd was originally made was because vampires they appeared in some sort of dungeon and they attacked the players. But there's no like, why is the vampire in that dungeon? And the writers of this decided vampires are way cooler than this. So they had to have their own castle. They're like the masters of an army. They're much more into subterfuge and deception, all this kind of stuff, and they kind of really added on all these massive amounts of layers around Strahd, based on like obviously Dracula and stuff like that. But it's a really cool character.
Yeah, I like he's such a foreboding character. Like, he's always kind of there in the background. The odd times you bump into him, you're like, oh nuts, he's gonna kill us now. Oh no, okay, he didn't. He ran away. Okay, but like, I mean, you've got Strahd, and like they put so much effort into making Strahd such a good, strong character, but like they really write the smaller characters and the NPCs and stuff like that really well. You've got some really interesting people you meet along the way, and you're never going into town going, I'll just, tick a box here and then I'll leave again and I'll go. It's all just progressing towards, you meet people and they're like, oh, please help me out. I'm really struggling. We're stuck here under the Curse of Strahd. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to go help these people too. Maybe I have to go get a sheep for them, but you know what? I'm going to help them.
I love it. As I was the DM of Curse of Strahd, and I love, there's one scene that kind of brings this of Strahd to life for me anyway, was when the party was in Vallaki and the vampires had just broken loose and started spreading around and doing some damage. They were trying to get these bones. If you played Strahd, you kind of know what I'm talking about. One character was chasing after a guy with the bones, and then as a DM, I decided I was gonna like have dark weather come in, and there's lightning, and then suddenly in the sky there's a big firing arch, and it was Strahd on a fire horse, and that was just a really cool experience because the characters party, I could see them discussing it, of deciding whether they should just leave Vallaki or they should face Strahd.
Just let the town burn.
It was very cool. And he's such a foreboding character that he can just appear on by himself on a fire horse and just cause like the whole town is in panic now.
Yeah, I still think that's one of the best bits where he rides in on this big fire horse and everyone's like, oh crap, we have to get out of here. We've barely survived the fight with these vampire spawn. We're not going to survive a fight with Strahd. Let's just run away. It's like, oh no, one of our party ran that direction. We need to go make sure they're not just going to be murdered. So let's chase after them. And then you're just following this trail of destruction and fire from this horse.
And I was the member of the party that was way out there. I had transformed into a wolf, so I was miles away from everyone else because I was chasing the vampire, just having to get to a church. And I was face to face with Strahd all by myself.
And then you got the bones and you were actually face to face with Strahd. And then the session had started and you had to decide what to do as Strahd is looking at you saying, I want the bones. Very cool. Very cool. Very interesting kind of decisions you have to make because you don't know what level Strahd's at. If you're that kind of meta gamer, you don't know how powerful this guy is and why is he on his own with all these vampires. And then you guys, you ended up being in the church with him, conversing with him because there's so very few supervillains out there in these campaigns that you can actually converse with. Instead of if it's like a giant dragon or if it's a thing, you might get some dialogue. But this guy, he wants to kind of deceive you. He wants to make it look like he's on your side. And he, what can you get out of this relationship and stuff like that? He doesn't want to just kill you guys. He wants to use you guys. And so it's very cool to have all 6 of you guys just talking to Strahd, trying to figure out a way, trying to convince him Irene is dead.
I love that throughout the whole campaign up to this point, all of us had been rolling terribly. We'd been unlucky to even walk without tripping over our own shoelaces. And we encounter Strahd and he's trying his mind control powers on us and all of us just rolling natural 20s and 19s and everything with bonuses to resist his mind control powers and just nothing.
That was impressive. Because you had to roll like 18, 19 or 20 to survive. And I was like, I'll charm a few of you, get them onto my side. I did it twice. You guys are fine. Powerful stuff, yeah.
So I think even without the main plot of Strahd, there's like loads that goes on in the campaign. The campaign has been around. There's loads of like little side quests, little stories, and while the events are moving on, you don't have control over that. So it's going to be different for everyone who plays. And I think that makes a really big difference. So like, I guess if we knew what was coming, or there's spoilers on the internet all over the place for this campaign.
Podcast spoilers.
And it just meant that you couldn't really tell that much from the spoilers because everything was so unique to your experience. There was like, we got to Barovia and some of the things we were able to do, other things we couldn't do. Valleki, there was loads of things that we didn't get distracted by, things we progressed that we didn't mean to progress. And it just felt like it was kind of more real because you didn't have control over that. Obviously, that meant there was probably loads of reading involved in the DM side of it, but there was definitely a real feel for a unique experience, I thought.
Yeah, it was cool, like with the Lady Watcher, where you're like, oh, you have to go rescue her, and you're like, oh yeah, we'll get around to that in a few minutes. We'll go explore over here first. And all of a sudden it's like, no, she's gone. She was arrested. It's like, oh, but wait, what? No, I wanted to go to her. It's like, well, too late.
Yeah. In the campaign, they kill her. But there's a really cool addition to that, which is the prison, the Valleki prison. You guys didn't visit it, but it was cool to have it there just in case you guys wanted to go rescue her. You didn't really know who she was at that point, but I think those kind of additions to it really help. And it's easy enough for a DM to handle because there's not a whole lot of overarching things that change, but you do have lots of events that the players don't need to be part of that will just happen. There's lots of NPCs in this that have their own motives, that are trying to do something. It doesn't really relate to the players. If the players want to get involved, they can, but it doesn't really affect. So like, Lady Watcher in Valleki, she was trying to get the Baron out regardless of what you guys do. She might take some advantages here and there. Strahd, he doesn't really have an overarching thing. He just wants to mess with the players. So that one's much easier to kind of handle. And there's loads of other and all the NPCs want to do something. So it is like a real world Barovia where things are happening. And it's not just this kind of blank slate. Everything's going to change. The longer you play in this world, the more things are just going to be totally different. Yeah.
I really liked as well that, like, one great feature of it is that it's not just a walk in, smash and bash campaign. You're not just walking from fight to fight to fight. If you're a player who really likes going in and just taking out the sword and smacking things, it has a ton of fights in it. But, you know, if you're a character who likes stealthing around and likes, you know, trying to manipulate people and find out all the backstory and try and get around it without having to draw your weapons, there's a load of options for that as well. You're not stuck going one path or the other, or punished heavily for going one path or the other. You've so many options to do both. I think that works out really well for it. So it's very accessible. I suppose it's a good way to describe it. It's very accessible no matter what type of play style you like.
And there's loads of opportunity if you're like me and obsessed with trying to try each spell that a druid has for some random reason to stick it into the plot each time. So I got to use a pretty full range of weird spells at weird times and keep them learned to use. I think that sort of thing is really good. But even on a lower level than what sort of game that you want, you can just role play like a really honorable person or like a devious, money hungry, whatever, and the plot can still cope with that. It doesn't need you to be chaotic good or chaotic evil or anything in between, or like it'll allow for anything in between. It really, really gives you a lot of role playing opportunities that you don't find in some other campaigns where you have to go help the village in some back arse of nowhere. It has a lot more opportunities than that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one of the reasons I love Curse of Strahd is because of that. The fact that almost any player can get what they want out of it. So you'll have some players, most players, new players anyway, start off and they want to hack and slash. They want to go in, they want to kill a few goblins, they want to get the feel for the game. And then, but as they play more and more, they want to get into the more social aspects of it, which is conversing with NPCs, seeing what the problems are, and then as they go along, they're trying to come up with these creative solutions to problems. And no matter what kind of player you are, the DM will have something to be able to give them, which is kind of rare in games. Usually they're either combat focused or social encounter focused, you know, political intrigue, that kind of stuff. It has everything, but the DM doesn't have to include everything. So based on the players and how they play, they can do whatever they want. A good example is the witches. So they had, you know, this old woman selling dream pies. You guys were kind of cool. Like we had people in the backstory who were like addicted to things. So that kind of stuff integrated perfectly into the story. But then I knew, because you guys were in these kind of social situations, that if I included a social interaction with the witches where they pretended to be old ladies in a windmill, you could end up having a conversation with them and trying to figure out, are these old ladies good or evil, or what are they?
To make some damn good pies.
And then they go in and they show you the pies and stuff like that. And then, like, you know, you'd have to do some searching around. And as one part of the group is conversing with them, trying to see if they're going to get anything out of it, another person is like sneaking around the back and they find like old children's clothes. Yeah. And then like it's starting to add up. And like you guys already had your hunches, but you just don't want to kill old ladies on a hunch. So until you find proof, yeah. It's like a detective story when there is no law, but there is like this kind of moral kind of social thing that you guys are struggling with.
So you named your quaint little cottage bakery Bone Grinder. Interesting.
Yeah.
Any reason?
You didn't find that out until after.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It actually leads into one of the other things that makes Curse of Strahd pretty cool, is that the combat is incredibly dangerous. So that encounter turned out to be very close to a total party kill. We absolutely, I think at one point only one of us was alive, and at another point only a different character was alive, and we were trying to do everything we can to just revive people, and we came so close to death so many times at that, and it was really, really tough to get through.
I'm fairly sure we finished that fight with only one person left standing on 1 health or something like that, and then it was just a frantic wake everyone up.
And it was so scary so when we were playing it, there was a third woman who lived there, and we knew she lived there, and she wasn't home. One of the characters was waiting at the door, and him seeing her in the distance and us going, we can't handle the 2 people who are here. What the hell are we going to do if she comes up the road?
That's what it's so good for as a DM, because you can foreshadow events like that, and then it's up to you. If combat does happen, you can bring in another. They're called hags, but they're kind of pretty much like witches. But yeah, when she does arrive, it's not a surprise to the players. They're not going, oh, like more. The DM's just sending more people at us just because he wants us dead. Yeah. This is actually meant to happen in the story. It feels more kind of relevant and more believable for the players. And yeah, I was worried about that a lot, because you guys were Like, it's only because there were 6 of you. If there was 5 of you, you'd all be dead. But like, just because there was so many of you, you managed to get through it. Curse of Strahd is massively difficult combat encounters, almost throughout the entire campaign.
Oh God, yeah.
And some of them were surprise hard. We were in the vineyard later on, and there were twigs that seemed so easy to kill, like no problem to any of us, but there were just so many of them that we nearly died in that battle. We came pretty close to running out of spells and running out of everything to attack them because they just kept coming. And that seemed like, once we had killed the druids, it seemed like whatever, it's a walk in the park, and it was not.
Yeah. Like it's the age-old debate. How many 7-year-olds could you legitimately take in a fight? Like 1 or 2, sure, you probably have the upper hand, but if there's 30 of them, now they've got the number advantage. And those twiglets, oh God, there was just like, you'd wipe out an entire wave of them and you're like, yes, that's it. We're on our, oh God, there's 100 more.
Yeah. It got messy. It got messy very quickly. So many combat encounters are like that. It brings me back to that's one of the reasons I love the group that we played with, because the social encounters are always part of it. So I knew that, I could throw lots and lots of cool things at you and give you kind of interesting ways to get out of it or make it easier so that you could survive. And that kind of stuff you can add in quite easily to Curse of Strahd. One is the thing that brings me that point is Argan Vostald, who's a dragon who doesn't exist. He's dead. He's been dead for like thousands, maybe hundreds of years. Yeah. And you guys resurrected Argan Vostald, the dragon. And obviously he's pissed off because he died. You guys could easily have gotten into a combat encounter with him, and he's probably stronger than Strahd. So it wouldn't have gone well.
I like that we forgot to rescue him before we resurrected him. So instead of taking his bones out of the castle, we resurrected him. He just resurrected in the middle of the enemy army that killed him in the first place. Oh my God, I'm still alive. Oh God.
Yeah.
Why do you think the campaign was so compelling for players? I guess that me and Brian were 2 of the players. It was quite a big party. It was 6 people. What did you think?
Like this was my first big D&D campaign. Like I've played a few smaller one-shots, or maybe it's a couple of sessions, but I'd never really played a big long campaign. I honestly didn't know what to expect. I thought, will I get bored? What if I'm killed really early and then I'm just sitting there watching everyone else play? But Curse of Strahd is brilliant because it's such a big open world. Like, I love a good sandbox game where, you've got your objectives and you can just explore, you can look anywhere, you can do whatever you want, go off and explore the woods, stab a load of squirrels until you level up. If that's what you really want to do, it's going to be a boring campaign, but but it's brilliant because you can play whatever way you like. You can go off and do all the side quests. You can just follow the main quest. It's brilliant. It really reels you in no matter what way you like to play, no matter how you're playing, whether you're attacking, whether you're trying to make peace with everyone. There's options for everyone, and you can really enjoy the campaign no matter what style, character, whatever it may be that you jump in with.
And so I hadn't played D&D for a few years before we played Curse of Strahd. It had been a while, and I found that like the setting was really easy to get comfortable with. So when I was worried about how much I'd need to remember or how much I'd need to know, and I felt like there was a good few new players, so then the balance was kind of worrying. But actually it was really easy to get settled in because you know the story of Dracula, who doesn't, and you knew where you fit in the world pretty quickly. And the start of the game is Death House, or it's not called Death House, but there's this very linear path. And I guess on our first fight, we had no idea what we were doing.
Oh,
It was like the most hilarious fight with an armor.
Animated armor. Oh, we were basically just tripping over ourselves trying to.
3 of us grappled him to the ground. Was it any use? Who knows? We don't even know if that helped the situation. And we sent off, the wizard got a really good idea at the start of the fight that maybe we need the sword from downstairs that had the same symbol as the coat of armor did. So the wizard ran downstairs to go get it, which meant the wizard, who was the only one who could get past the really high AC of the armor, was gone for like 3 rounds, 4 rounds.
We were just shooting it with little low damage bows and stabbing it with daggers and stuff. It's just chinking off its armor, doing no damage whatsoever. At one point, I think when we had when we had it grappled to the ground, we were literally just trying to dismantle the armor, like just take off body parts. To, I think at one point someone rolled really well and just took a sword out of the hand of the armor.
Yeah, disarm.
And then followed shortly by the armor just disarming us back.
But it's a nice progression. There was no... You felt like, even though some of the fights were tough, the plot line followed along nicely. At the start, you were in kind of a closed world, and it opened up. So it was a good one to start back to D&D, and it was a good one for the new players, I definitely think, to start into, and to get a feel for what they like about D&D, because it has everything. It has detective, it has fighting, it has people who just want to like really, really role play their role. It has the ability to be the person who just wants to steal gold the whole way through the campaign.
Rob every treasure they find. And I know you're listening to this. You know who you are.
Thanks for the support. So it just meant that everyone could find their place without it ruining the game for everyone else.
You know, I was going to say, because it's such a big open world and you have so many different things you can do, you never feel railroaded, like you're being forced to follow this path. But you're right, at the start it's good. You're forced into Barovia, and then you're forced to fight your way through this death house. But you kind of come through it and out the side, and then you're basically just in this new world. So you're introduced to it by just being shoved through the door, and you follow the path and escape, and that's really the end of the railroading. The world is yours to explore after that. So you get escorted through the initial attack, and then you're free to do what you want. So you can, and I'm sure the DM, if we had wandered off one more time following one more side quest, was just going to send something to just horde us towards the castle. But it's
probably no. You guys are having fun. That's all. That's what I care about.
Just one more campaign, one more night, one more session.
I realized at month 6, I was like, this is not going to last 3 months.
We were all lulled in with that 3-month estimate.
It was like most people said they were like takes 3 months, but no. I think that house is really cool. It's supposed to be a railroad. A lot of people online give out about it. But I think for new players, it really adds, like, what is D&D about? And it puts them into it, and it goes, when you're fighting that animate armor, it's not about, like, your attack rolls and damage and stuff like that, but it can be about just grappling them down, go and find the magical sword. It can be creative. It can be totally different. Your action doesn't have to be attack. It can be anything. And I think that kind of mentality Death House kind of gives you. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can talk to some of the bad guys. So, like, we met a ghost, and I guess we kind of, our fighter started fighting or something like that. We came into the room and then we realized we could actually just talk to the person. Like, it was perfectly acceptable to, I think even I attacked at some point, but it was actually then it was like, oh, we could find out plot. It was pretty cool.
I didn't ask how big the room was. I said I cast Fireball.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't get Fireball at level 1.
Everywhere you went, it felt like there was something going to happen. There was always something to reel you in or to attract you, or, you'd go to a new town, you're like, oh, we have to go here and we have to try and find out what happened down at the vineyard. But you end up getting dragged into another side quest, another combat, another, are we going to arrest these guys, or we found these traitors or trespassers, and you're always kind of going, oh, I don't want to go somewhere else because it's just going to be another thing we have to do, but I also really want to do the thing.
Owen, so you were Dungeon Master for this campaign. Why did you find it so compelling?
Well, I think the problem I had was there was 6 players coming in and there was 5 new players. So you, Kira, were the only non-new player, pretty much. And it was tricky to find a compelling story that was kind of open to allow anybody to do anything. I didn't know what people would want to do. I knew that they worked well together and they'd come to compromises, but I wanted to make sure no matter what compromise they came up with, the campaign would have something for them. And I think for new players, it's absolutely incredible. It gives them so many different options to be who they want to be and to get what they want out of the game, because there are no real rules in Dungeons & Dragons. It was my first time DMing a campaign as well, so we're kind of making up the rules as we went along too. And that kind of freedom and improvisation, Curse of Strahd really helped it. It didn't hinder, it didn't force you onto a railroad path. It let you let Strahd be whoever he wanted to be, and you can change him later. It let people come up with their backstories at later points and integrate it into the plot. And there was lots of hooks into it. You can kind of build Curse of Strahd however you want into kind of, and you can also bring in NPCs and locations and turn them into things that you want to represent, and kind of interesting choices that the players had to make. So you could have like, the hags, they were kind of old ladies, so people don't want to hurt old ladies, but they're evil. So like, you have all these kind of social dilemmas that people had that were absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, new players, totally welcome.
Yeah, don't want to hurt old ladies until I find out they're cooking children, and then hell yeah, then I'm throwing them into the fireplace.
Yeah, but those pies are quite nice though. Yeah,
they were quite nice pies.
Yeah, because those kind of interesting plots are fantastic. They're like side quests, but they also integrate into the team and the plot line of it. And they're so great because so many campaigns you see online are, especially when it comes to random encounters, they're just like, here's 5 werewolves and they attack the party in the forest. And you're like, they never ask why, And I know it's kind of pedantic, kind of slightly, especially for a DM. Sure, these people just want to hack and slash, but I love to ask the question why. So when you have this like old lady giving out pies, it's great because she has a backstory and she has all that kind of stuff. And maybe the players won't know about the backstory or where she came from, but it's good that it's there, and it's good that you can customize it to be whatever you want it to be. That creates the memorable moments because, we had like fire wolves in the forest, and they were cool because they're very difficult combats, but no one cared about why the fire wolves were there. But you want those kind of random encounters to be memorable, to be part of the story, to kind of enrich the gameplay.
And I think as players, there were some people where we absolutely became obsessed with their backstories, and then other people, like the crazy person who came by the church and banged on the door, we just completely blew her off. We were like, she sounds a bit crazy.
Is everyone okay just pretending we didn't hear that knock? Okay, yeah.
That's Mad Mary. She had a big backstory, and she knocked on the door, and the guys were like, no, we're not opening.
We're not here.
We were pretty sure it was going to be evil.
She was Mad Mary. She's crazy, but she's a nice person. Who wouldn't be crazy living in Barovia? But I think the cool thing, not only can you modify the current Curse of Strahd with NPCs and locations, but you can also modify the players' backgrounds to be part of the story. So as a DM, I absolutely love the fact that I could go, like, the wizard was trying to get into dark arts, and so I linked it to Van Richten, who was like a dark arts dealer, and that kind of thing was kind of playing on in the background. But you can also have, like, Kira, your brother Ash was he supposedly died in a caravan thing, but you never saw the body, so you weren't really sure, and so I could just include that in, but it was a trick, all this kind of really.
I was lulled in by that trick and devastated when you untricked me.
Yeah, because I invented a new thing, which is the symbol of Vol, which is in like first edition Curse of Strahd. But what I did was I had like as on like creatures, and to say that it was like Strahd's army, and it was his way of controlling monsters and NPCs in the game. He would kind of tattoo something on it, and I showed them this giant cavern once with this giant skeleton, and on the skull was carved the symbol of Vol, and that was like Strahd trying to control this mighty beast. So that when it was like foreshadowing, so when I brought it up later, it was pretty obvious. I could just put it onto Ash, put him inside the vineyard, and they would all go, oh, he's being controlled by Strahd, even though yes, he was, but also he's bad and evil, and I wasn't Ash. He was a doppelganger. Yeah. Those kind of things, it makes it really compelling for the characters, and it's really easy to integrate into Curse of Strahd because that stuff isn't in the campaign. Because of the theme, because of how it's laid out, I can just put that in, and it fits perfectly, and you feel like it's part of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think even subsequent like one-shots and scenarios that we've done have proven that sometimes if there's not enough going on or enough side issues or side quests kind of style, that we can end up with not being able to integrate character backgrounds in some scenarios where the plot is so dedicated, it can be really hard to add that sort of background in,
especially compelling side things. You need, because they can't just be slapped on like, oh, there's a goblins attacking this village to the side. It's not really compelling. But like, whereas if it's my brother and he's got a thing on his head, you're like, oh, I really need to resolve this.
I went all about the resolving.
Yeah, we did. When we came across any of our background stuff, it was really great to try and get some closure on it. Yeah. Like I came across, like my background was the whole my whole village had been destroyed by an evil corruption. And I came across the same corruption in Barovia and found out this is the source of it. And these guys are responsible for everyone I know and love dying. Yeah, a bit of a murder spree.
Yeah. I think the character creation as well is what makes Curse of Strahd really great. Because, you talk about the backgrounds, but also the characters themselves. I think a lot of new players, when they come to D&D campaign, they're not sure what to create. They're not sure what would work well in a kind of balanced team. And when you throw at them like werewolves and like ghosts and people who can control minds and stuff like that, you start to think like, there's obvious choices like paladin, cleric. We didn't have a cleric in our group. We had a paladin, which is good enough, and then there's like lots of forests and stuff like that. So there's a ranger. I think the choices that players make, first of all, they want to choose who they want to choose. But because of variety in Curse of Strahd, it'll work. But also, if they really cared about, like, the team and stuff like that, they want to pick cool things for them. So all that kind of stuff works really well together. And we kind of got lucky sometimes. Like, you picked the druid, Kira, and it turns out there's a very heavy druid side plot to it.
Yeah.
That was pure chance. Yeah. Pure chance. But I think it all works together.
They never believed I was one of their druids, though. I tried to trick them, but they weren't having any of it.
They tried to do a persuasion roll and roll like a 6 or something.
Yeah, it was really bad.
I too am a druid, natural 1.
Yeah. There's lots of other things about it. As a DM, it's really handy. The fact that it's sandboxed, like I mentioned before, you can't go to Waterdeep and get help from people in your backstory is great. Which means you can be a noble, you can be like an old military guy, but none of that's going to help you in Barovia unless the DM specifically integrates it into the plot. But yeah, I think all that kind of stuff really, really helps.
So it's one of the big advantages I would imagine to DMing Curse of Strahd is that because it's been around so long and so many people have played it, there is a good bit of help online that you can access, you can find, you can incorporate their ideas and stuff they've done to try it out.
Yeah, definitely. Like the good thing about new players as well is they don't Google Curse of Strahd and they don't have to ruin it for themselves, which is great because it's very easy to ruin. Like, you can find this podcast and ruin it.
Don't do this unless you're DMing or...
Yeah, if you've listened up to this point, I'm sorry.
Maybe just loop back there to what Brian was saying. What were the mods and extra stuff that you added in that you thought added to the Curse of Strahd campaign that aren't in the main quest?
So very specifically, if you go into DM's Guild, which is a place for D&D kind of community created content, I found Elven Tower, which is really good. That kind of gives you an easier summary of Curse of Strahd, easier to manage, gives you more background story and kind of puts it in a nice way. So if you're just trying to DM, trying to figure out what does Vallaki do and how does Vallaki work, Elven Tower is great for that. Then there's also Reddit posts called Mandy Mod and Dragnacarta, who definitely check those out. I'm sure if you just Google Reddit Curse of Strahd, you'll find it. They added in so much cool new content. So they've added in lots of different like buildings into Vallaki, lots of different side quests. They also change some of the backgrounds, and it just gives you more options and gives you more choices to make during Curse of Strahd. So when like the characters went to Vallaki, there were so many cool new things that they could go and visit, like the prison and like an armory. And if you go into the normal shop, now there's a guy there and he's like a dwarf and he's got like a backstory and all that kind of stuff means you don't have to think as much. Also, some of the cool things we added in was Jenny. She wasn't part of Curse of Strahd, but our players, obviously players, you can never tell as a DM who they're going to gravitate towards. Jenny was a big one. She gave like magical items to people, like, put stuff onto their axes and did all sorts of cool stuff. And she wasn't part of it. But I think the biggest one, obviously, is Lancelot.
Oh, Lancelot.
Definitely, Lancelot.
Lancelot is a dog that I put in a death house. And the idea behind it is, it gives the players a choice to sacrifice the dog at the end of death house to escape if they want to. No one ever does it. But that dog went all the way through Barovia and ended up helping defeat Strahd, which is absolutely incredible. And the dog met its owner, and there was like a side story, and it met with Jenny and became part Fae. Like there's a whole backstory that the characters really engaged with, and you really can't tell who they're going to like in the NPCs. But yeah, you put a dog in, they're going to like that dog.
Oh man, we bent over backwards to protect that dog. The dog was supposed to be able to help us in combat, and then when it met Jenny, it got super powered. And still, no, you stay there, Lancelot. We'll protect you. Don't you worry.
Yeah, we didn't trust anyone near Lancelot at all. And we all learned like skills to try and we learned to train Lancelot for combat. We still didn't let him in combat. We did like animal handling, and we learned to talk to animals, and he still had to do everything from the back. He was allowed sniff things and do investigation, and that was it.
And a saddle. You put a saddle on
Put a saddle on him for our little hobbit that was running along with us with their tiny little legs.
Hobbit is copyrighted. They are halflings. I don't know how they're copyrighted, but there you go.
So we're probably leading in a little bit to some of the favorite memories that you have, playing Curse of Strahd. If you want to share some of those with me.
I think some of my favorite memories were just some of the more ridiculous things that happened. Like, a brilliant one was when Strahd was, he showed up in Vallaki. We were all terrified. We'd survived his mind control attempts, and we'd convinced him that Irina was actually dead through some amazing persuasion rolls. And he was just like, oh, okay, well, I'll leave. And he just disappeared into a wisp of smoke. And then we were all just standing there going, oh, okay. And then he just reappeared and goes, oh, God damn, my horse. Just hops on his horse and flies out.
Yeah.
And he was so cool disappearing the first time. The second time I was like, oh.
You make a cool dramatic exit and then come back and, oh, I forgot my keys. Oh.
That was hilarious. That was also one of my favorite early experiences, because we were trying to hide Irina. So we were trying to convince Strahd Irina was dead, and she was in the background. And like, I rolled a really good, I turned into a giant spider, and because they have like extra bonuses for stealth checks, and we climbed up the side of the wall of the church and looked in from the top so that Strahd couldn't see us. And we were completely hidden from him, and it was all the like weird stuff we got to do in that one. And like, our wizard tried to convince Strahd that Irina was dead by handing him Irina's sword, going, totally dead, absolutely.
Yeah, and Strahd ended up taking that sword and using it in combat at the end. It's cool. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Obviously, that Strahd turning into smoke and then getting on the horse was an accident. It
was very cool.
Very funny, yeah.
Yeah, I think that whole scene was really cool and very memorable. Just because I didn't know what was going to happen as well. So throughout the entire session, you're like, I'm just going to say Strahd appears and he's going to be there and he's going to want the bones. I don't know what's going to happen, and it's great. The whole like 2 sessions or 3 sessions was just improv, which was just awesome. Yeah.
I liked as well, we came across a big cave full of blind bears, and we were like, one of them chased us outside, and we were trying so hard not to kill it. We felt really sorry for this bear, and so we were just trying to knock it out so it would stop mauling at us. And we knocked the bear out, and we were like, okay, thank God, the bear's fine. We didn't kill him. He'll wake up. He'll have a sore head. Everything will be fine. And it turned out that we'd knocked him out and left him face down in a river and completely forgotten about him. And we're just so remorseful over accidentally killing him. After going to so much effort to knock him out and not kill him, and we just left him face down in a river. It was just...
Well, I think what happened was he did get knocked out into the river, and then Pandora decided to make sure he didn't drown.
Yeah.
But then I just kept constantly pushing the idea that the bear did drown, but I don't think it did. I think it was okay.
I know, we were so sad though.
It just became a recurring joke of just like, remember that time you drowned a bear? But I don't think you actually did. I think you got
and we
away
tried, like, I transformed into a bear to try and calm the blind bear. And it didn't work. It only added to the confusion of the whole thing.
That bear was really confused. You saw a bear and then a lot of people, and it's like, what is going on? Which was blind, but yeah.
Sensed.
I loved our fight on Yester Hill as well. We were fighting the Archdruid, and like we were being beaten. I don't know if I can say ass. We were getting our asses kicked.
I think I said it earlier as well.
We were getting our necks kicked. We were losing badly, and our wizard decided to cast a last-ditch Hail Mary spell and rolled like a 2 or something like that.
Done that one.
Missed.
It was a nat 1.
A nat 1. And we were like, oh my God, this is it. He's going to absolutely destroy us. This is it. That was our only chance to survive. And she's like, wait, I'll use my inspiration dice. And rolled the inspiration dice and rolled a natural 20. And just massive damage on the Archdruid. It was the only reason we survived that fight at all.
It was a chromatic orb, and it did massive amounts of damage. I'm actually looking at a picture right now of the sketch I did of that exact same scenario. But yeah, that was crazy, because that dragon was huge. Because it's another thing about Curse of Strahd is that there wasn't anything at the top of Yester Hill.
Yeah.
In the book, you walk up to the top and there's nothing along the way. You get to the top and there's like 3 druids and 2 barbarians, and it's a really easy fight for the people. So I was like, going to have this tower filled with all sorts of people, and then at the very top there's a dragon. I didn't do a whole lot of foreshadowing for it because I only came up with that idea mid-session, so I couldn't really prepare the characters for a dragon. But it's really cool, because the Yester Hill was this kind of cool hill in the middle of nowhere, and it's like this druid thing, which is like Mandy Mod, I think it is, or Dragon Carta, I can't remember, put in like a ghost at the bottom of the hill who would kind of give you some history and background, and then also you got to put the soul to rest and all that kind of stuff, and none of that's in it. So I think adding in that background is really cool. It creates a really great memory for people.
I also like the how fast we killed the other Archdruid and his rook. It was a rook, was it? Yeah. So he was flying around on this thing. We were getting close to Strahd. We were crossing somewhere, and he flew down, and we started attacking him and everything, and he just flew too close, and our fighter jumped on, and we had already done like damage, and it seemed like he was going to be really hard to kill, but we went straight for the Archdruid. We didn't touch the bird, and we absolutely destroyed him straight away. It was like the shortest fight, and it was supposed to be so long.
It was going to be incredibly difficult, and then just a series of really fortunate rolls.
You blinded the rock.
Oh yeah, so he landed down,
and then it crash landed, and then the druid got on top, or the flyer got on top, and then just took out the druid. I planned that because the rock was really powerful, the druid was really powerful, and I made sure that the druid could fire in a distance and keep a ranged combat kind of thing. And then you guys, because I make sure all my combats are really deadly, just because it keeps in team with what the book says the fight should be. And you guys took out that Archdruid so quickly.
And we were worried we'd have to kill the rook, but we didn't. He flew away. He was fine because we
just once he was out of the spell's control, he was just like, oh, okay, see you later.
There's so many cool things. That was on the road to Amber Temple. I remember Amber Temple was kind of cool. That was one, as the DM, I didn't really understand why it was there. So it's kind of very optional. I wasn't pushing it at all.
No,
I didn't put any story against it. Players still decided to go to Amber Temple, and it was one of the most kind of most popular sessions we had. Kind of traversing Amber Temple. It was very, very combat heavy and very difficult, and I don't know how they survived. They got around so many cool things.
We nearly got our asses kicked in the first fight.
Oh yeah.
So we were scared the whole way through the whole temple. So like as soon as that first fight was over and we like nearly died completely, those guys destroyed us at the start, and then we were like, okay, we are super cautious from now on. Everything is going to be like stealth, sneak. You're going to give us a little bit of like, we won't run into anything at all. We went in to see the lich. We were just like trying to be friends with him. Like, we didn't want any sort of fighting. We definitely didn't want to hurt him.
I liked that we walked into a room and there's just like 2 floating flaming skulls there. It's like, this will be an easy fight. This will be over in no time. Just like knock them out of the sky, and God, the flaming skulls do 60 damage. Like, oh no. To all of you.
That's Fireball. That's Amber Temple shows you Fireball is the most powerful spell in D&D.
so damaging.
So Amber Temple also has some really cool choices to make. It's kind of rare for people to pick the sarcophagus and to pick the powers of the dark gods, because they're very kind of evil and they're very foreboding, and they have all this thing saying like, this is a bad contract, with the devil you're making here. And we had one player who was role-playing Irina, the actual, like one of the main characters in Curse of Strahd, and she took all of them.
I love that. The paladin just standing there going, guys, I sense some serious evil from this. We should just stay away. We should go nowhere near them. And Irina just ducks under the paladin. I take the power.
I can't remember. Was it 4 or 5? I can't remember. But like, she had like ice powers. Oh, but by the end of it, she was actually dead. She was a zombie. She had 0 life force going through her. But she could do all these kind of crazy things. But then she also brought back Argynvostholt.
Yeah, which was really key to us getting through Ravenloft.
Yeah, that was kind of.
I like that she also got like charisma of 25 or something like that. She had ultimate charisma. She could persuade anyone of anything.
Yeah. Amber Temple is really cool. And it changes the game so much. Like before Amber Temple, if you guys had gone and continued on the plot, it would have been a totally different game than after Amber Temple. It changes everything. And like you only get like, I think I gave you guys 2 levels going through Amber Temple, but yeah, it changes the whole campaign.
In Amber Temple, we found the map of Ravenloft, which was really like key. We actually were able to use it to come up with a really good plan to get in. But yeah, we lost pretty much Irina to the dark forces in it, but she seemed cool with it. And I think if she hadn't got that lucky roll at the start, she would have been more hesitant. But she came away from the first thing with no bad effect. Yeah, like so she just went all in.
I love that she got the charisma of 25. Like Amber Temple changes the game so much if you remember to use the abilities you get. Like we put Irina up the front of a Operation Dragon Wagon where we were just we were rolling an explosive barrel up to the walls of Ravenloft to try and get through their defenses, and we were going to have Irina with her massive high charisma just convince everyone that, oh no, we're supposed to be here, we're just making a delivery, nothing to worry about. And Irina got up to the first checkpoint and the guard was like, oh, what are you doing here? And instead of using any of her charisma, she went, panicked and just charged charged the wagon straight down the driveway. Just zero use of her massive persuasion ability.
That's one of my favorite memories throughout the D&D campaign is when people did things that was against their skills. You know, they got like a -1 in something or a -2 in something, and they try it anyway. Even though there's like someone else in the party who's like got a +4. Yeah. They were the one like convincing someone else to do something or deceiving or trying to do a sleight of hand, even though they have no sleight of hand. Yeah. Those kind of scenes in the Curse of Strahd are so memorable and so great. If I was to do a big session like that again, I'd probably push that even further, and I'd make sure that people have more negative attributes associated with them. So instead of everyone being like 0 or -1, get a -2 in there, just because it changes things and it creates these memorable moments.
There was one that and again, it's just brilliant like that, where I think it was when we were in Vallaki with Strahd, like myself and our fighter Pandora, we were sitting at the opposite end of the table. The paladin was doing something and they were discussing the whole thing with Strahd, and our fighter leans over to me and goes, oh, here's a great plan. What if we try to deceive them and we'll make this cunning plan? We came up with this great plan. I was like, are you going to do it? I was like, oh, no, my charisma is 0. I was like, oh, my charisma is -1. And the two of us had this brilliant cunning plan, and we were separated from the rest of the party, so we couldn't go and tell them to do it. So the two of us here with negative charisma going up and trying to convince people to do everything our way. As a DM, you know, what were your kind of favorite moments from?
Oh, well, as a DM, I loved the fact that it's new players doing this, and I could put in the tropes of D&D into it. So there's lots of different kind of things that are constant whenever you do D&D campaigns. So one of them is the interrogation scene, which is, you know, it's where you grab a guard or whatever and you got to interrogate them for information about the king or whatever. And in this, you had one, which is the Vistani going around, and you guys managed to get like 6 of them, I think it was, or 3. No, 3.
3 of them, I think we had.
And then you ended up doing an interrogation scene. And what we did was we had one in each room, and we had 2 people in each Vistani, and it gave everyone their own kind of experience of it. And I actually quite like that, because it split the party up so that they all got their own thing out of it. And the mixture of them was fantastic. There was like, you know, you, Brian, were with the hardcore don't hurt anybody person, and you were a hardcore just kill.
Just, I'll threaten them until they give me information.
Yeah, so you had that was the first one that happened, and there was lots of threatening, and you got I made sure to have enough information for everybody when they're doing the interrogation. But yeah, those kind of trope scenes are so good, and they're so memorable because you were trying to convince them, and there's lots of dialogue between, you know, the paladin, and then of course there was the last one was the magic people. The magic people tried interrogating the person, and it wasn't going so well, and they just used magic to charm the person. And they're like, oh, this is taking too long. You are now my friend.
So these were some pretty memorable, amazing things that happened to us throughout the campaign. But what, if anything, would you have liked to see included in Curse of Strahd that wasn't there?
Yeah, I think at least from a DM point of view, there's a bit of a problem when it comes to how the D&D campaigns are structured. It's not a huge issue because you can find stuff online, but the problem is NPCs are not really given their own rights So like you get an NPC block in the back and it shows their stats and it might give a bit of a background on them. But the problem is they're a lot more integral into social games like we played. In a hack and slash game, you probably don't need it, but it would be nice to see like where the NPCs are in certain locations, and during events, sample dialogue they might say. Kind of do it in a more like a script in a movie kind of way, where at the start of every place like Vallaki, you get like a little kind of overview of the people there. Here's a couple of sample things they're saying and what they're trying to do. So if there's like an event that's happening and you're like Lady Watcher, she's there trying to get rid of the Baron and become the top dog. And she's also getting orders from Strahd while she's there. That kind of stuff, just bullet points to start, give a few things, means that if some improv does happen, you've got somewhere to go. Because if it's all written down and it's deep in some paragraphs on a specific page that you're not sure where it is, it's hard to remember. Yeah, you just need that. And the problem is NPCs, they don't have to be at a certain location. They can move around. And if you put that in the overview in the start, or made NPCs a bit easier, you could put like Isaac Strasny, which our party quite liked, who's in a few different places. You can just drag him, drop him everywhere, and just make sure he's part of the thing. Yeah.
I guess one of the things I found out after Curse of Strahd was that Owen had put in a lot of more interesting random encounters than were in the Curse of Strahd scenario book. So I guess we really didn't get driven early on by any of the kind of just, you settle down at camp for a night and you're attacked by some wolves when there wasn't any reason to it. That really didn't sit that well with the party. We're just like, oh, okay, so we're just going to go through the fight. And some of the party really enjoyed the fighting, but a lot of us were just like, oh, what is the point? Yeah.
Fight, yeah.
And then we found out that early on in the campaign, Owen had added in some extra layers to this. So things like the mark of Val on foreheads, that sort of stuff really made a difference. So then we were like, oh, there's a nest of creatures and there's a skull. There was a whole skull thing. And that really, really added to it, because it just felt like you were getting clues to everything that was going on in Barovia slowly. So yeah, there were big plot points you were getting in Amber Temple or whatever, but you were also getting these little tidbits being fed to you whenever random things. And it just kind of gave you a bit more drive to not go, oh, there's another fight again.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it was tricky to make them because there's nothing out there for random encounters that seemingly work well with the kind of plot line. So not only did I have to create the ones for the plot line, which was kind of tricky to do, I put in griffins and wolves and stuff, but at that point it just wasn't great. So I ended up having to create people like werewolves who were actual people, and then they'd be following along with you guys, and everyone knew he was a werewolf. And then night came and he turned into a werewolf, and you're all shocked.
We tried to chain him up.
Yeah. But I love that because you guys, you're not going to, you have a very big hunch that he's a werewolf, but you're not going to act on it because there's no proof, which is just a really strange thing, because you can do whatever you want in D&D.
And we didn't. We were really strict on we went in assuming everyone was a good guy until we had absolute proof. I think that's why Strahd occasionally lulled us into thinking he was a good guy. Yeah. He was like, oh no, it's not me. These are other people who are really, really bad. And we're like, oh, there's other people? And they were like, no, hold on.
He invited us for dinner. An evil person wouldn't invite you over for dinner.
An evil person wouldn't go to dinner.
Yeah.
You guys didn't go. Yeah, and there's some other cool events that I kind of added in, which are more related to the players. We had a goblin who's wearing a hat of disguise.
Oh yeah,
and
great.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. And we had this kind of old man. He'd tell the story because there's actual kind of background stories about Mordekainen that an old man would know about. And instead of just giving an old man on the right side of the road I decided to put a goblin with a hat on. He would tell the story. And then as you guys are eating soup, I think you all rolled for perception, but it was only Goblin Slayer that found out that he started to smell the smell of goblin. Yeah. And it didn't seem like it was coming from the soup. And after some chaos and stuff, turned out he was a goblin. That kind of random encounters, those are very kind of engaging by players, because not only do you get to ham fist in some plot line, which I really wanted to do, to tell them about the story of Mordekainen, but you also gave them something intriguing that they want to keep engaged in. I don't even think any of them remembered the plot line of Mordekainen or the whole thing, but they remember the goblin story a lot more. And so, it helps them remember. It helps push the plot line a little bit forward. Yeah.
I think for me, Kresk was a little dull. I mean, it's supposed to be this great sanctuary, and that's where you're trying to get Irina to keep her safe from Strahd, and it's the one place you can't get her. You'd expect there to be something to it, like, it's got this mystical force, or, it's got this big army or something, but you kind of land and there's just, a few boring people, nothing really exciting happening, and some guy sewing body parts together, and, nothing too exciting.
But even the, like, body part sewing bit, there wasn't much to it.
No.
Like, we couldn't really do anything or affect any change during the trip to the Abbey. Like, we met them and we were, like, questioning it and stuff, but he was just like, whatever. This is normal. I'm helping people. Helping.
Yeah. You didn't really feel like anything particularly interesting happened there. I mean, what did we buy? Some griffin eggs off him?
That was ages ago.
We used his boiler to warm our griffin eggs. That was it.
There's a dwarf who's part of the armory, who I added in, nothing part of the book, and he kind of took care of the griffins, which is a total separate side quest.
Well, there was quite a lot going on, and it was still very well thought out, but it probably wasn't the most interesting of all the places that we'd been. I think we got to interact a lot more in some of the other places, and even though it did have layers to the plot, probably wasn't.
It might just be that the rest of Curse of Strahd is so good that this looks bad in comparison, which is tough to know.
Yeah.
Our players didn't spend too much time in Crest. They didn't find out all the stuff about the backstories. But you don't need to learn everything about Barovia when you're in Curse of Strahd. You don't have to 100% complete it, because you can't. Every time you do 2%, another 2% changes that you've already done. So you're kind of always backpedaling in that kind of way. But yeah, that actually reminds me of this Esmeralda thing, because you have Esmeralda going around. I'm not a huge fan of Esmeralda, because she is hard to actually put into the plot. She appears in almost all the locations, and it's really annoying as a DM, because you don't know why she's there or how she relates to the characters and stuff. And I think it's up to the DM to kind of figure all that out. But the book doesn't really help you a whole lot. So what I did was pretty straightforward, actually. I just made Esmeralda part of a team. And so I had her part of, like, Balasar, who's this kind of sorcerer, dragon kind, just because I wanted to show them off, like, cool new characters, and pretty much made it like Han Solo and Chewbacca, because that's kind of like, as DMs, it's very easy just to go, here, what's a trope, just put it in, and then it turns out the goblin guy with the hat disguise joined our team later on. So that kind of stuff really helps create your own story, totally separate, and then just copy a movie or a TV show or something like that, and just have them go off and do their thing.
So I guess that's a good tip for running the campaign. Do you have any other tips if people are considering running their own Curse of Strahd campaign?
Yeah, there's some tips and tricks as a DM. I think you have to allow people to change as they learn more about Barovia. So instead of going, here's your backstory, I firmly believe that players should create their backstory as deep and detailed as possible, put in player names, put in stuff like that. It helped me when it came to your story, Kira, because I could just bring in Ash and I could bring in all these things, and you're a druid and I knew exactly how to kind of integrate that in. Because new players don't do that. New players don't know how to create this backstory. What does that even mean? That you gotta let them kind of change their story and change everything around it. And Barovia allows you to do that. There's lots of places to link in. So just make sure you're more flexible, make it more improvisation. This doesn't have to be a strict storytelling of a book. This is more of an improv session.
I definitely think being like getting those check-ins to seeing how we're liking things and disliking things really, really made it feel like, I don't know, they were usually on like WhatsApp outside of a session. So you could have a think about it and just see if there was and you didn't like. And I definitely found, so Owen was good enough to write up a session notes after every single session. They were usually quite funny and definitely very interesting. And I think that especially helped if something was going on and we were distracted with something, or it was late to the session or anything like that. That really, really helped to keep us all on board. And then another thing was, we kept forgetting what the fortune teller told us at the start. We were always like, I don't even remember what even with our notes and everything, we're like, oh, and then we'd go back on World Anvil where it was, and we'd just be like, okay, what exactly did she say? I need to know.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Having the journaling thing was very helpful. I already had exposition and kind of what people are saying in like a Google document. So I pretty much just copy and pasted it in, and then just added in what the players did during the thing and what the choices they made, and then that might have affected the speech and the things that happen. But yeah, I think as another tip to recommend is to kind of bring it all together in Strahd is the final battle with Strahd. So make sure you kind of you bring in lots of different elements that you're kind of foreshadowing throughout the entire campaign. And you don't have to bring everything to a nice little bow at the end. But my problem was, as a DM, is that everyone in the party had gotten all the items. So you had this magical sword that pretty much instantly kills Strahd. They had this amulet that instantly kills Strahd. And now they also have a dragon, which is helping them. And I was struggling to find a way of making this challenging. So I made sure I had like Jenny, who was against them. And then I had like there's kind of all these different challenging things. And she had like this symbol of Vol in her head. So I made sure to bring in all these elements into it for the final showdown. And that kind of made it's very kind of also like, there's 6 players. So you need to have multiple enemies in a room to be able to even compete against 6 players at a level 10. But yeah, I think your tips and tricks is trying to integrate everything. Try and make it one full cohesive story. Yeah.
That pretty much wraps it up for Curse of Strahd. If you enjoyed it, share it. We've been Decking Awesome Games. Thanks for listening. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.